Welcome to A Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY Radio.
A health promotion show brought to you by VIU nursing students.
Over the next hour, we will be demystifying health issues.
Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome to A Sound Constitution. The show today is a little bit special as it will be the final one with us as the hosts. As the semester comes to a close, we will be moving on to our final practicums in January. And so you, the listener, will be granted with a whole new group of A Sound Constitution hosts. In spirit, with it being our final show, we will have a couple of special guests who themselves were former hosts of the show, and we will check in with them to see where they're at and what they've been up to since finishing nursing school. I think I can speak for all of us as hosts in saying that this has been a truly incredible experience, and we all feel honored to have been given this space to be able to reach out to all of the listeners in our community. I hope you enjoy our final show. Up next is Julia and Sophia with Your Opinion Matters.
Hey you!
Who, me?
Yeah, you! We want to hear what you have to say, because
your opinion matters!
So I'm here today with a former host of A Sound Constitution for our Alumni Show today. Thank you very much for joining us. So the first question we have for you is, how long ago were you a host of A Sound Constitution?
Well, it was in 2011, so how long ago? That was 6 years ago.
There you go.
6 years, that's a long time.
And where has your career led you since then?
Well, it's led me right where I wanted to go, right into the community. I always knew I wanted to work in the community, ever since I figured out you could be a community nurse, and yeah. So I work in home and community care, or was it, no, we call it community health services. They change the name all the time. Anyway.
So looking at your experiences with A Sound Constitution, could you outline some of your biggest learnings from this?
Sure. So, I guess this is a little bit obvious. How to ask questions and do interviews was a huge bit of learning from the show, because we did that constantly all the time. And it turns out you do that constantly all the time as a nurse. When you get a new client or a patient, we like to call them clients now. When you get a new client, it's really handy to be able to just conduct a meaningful interview and get a lot of information, and also use that interview to create a little bit of a trust, a little bit of a relationship with the person, put them at ease. They give you fuller, better answers, and then you can better understand where they're at, where they need to go, and how it is that you're going to help them get there. So that's huge. The other thing is about teaching people. I think nursing has got a lot to do with teaching in general. I know in the community we do a lot of teaching because people are in their homes. They have to do things themselves. They have to do it themselves. Mm-hmm. They're not on the ward. They're not going to have a nurse checking in on them every hour. They're going to have a nurse checking in on them maybe twice a week. Mm-hmm. So they need to learn how to cope with whatever's going on in between that time. And we also really hope that eventually they'll be able to go off and do it on their own, 100% independent, and then we can discharge them from our service. So teaching. It's all about that. And so with that is the accessibility of language piece. In the radio show, we always had to try to make sure that we were speaking to everybody, that anybody could understand us. And that's been awesome to recognize the difference between institutionalized language and normal everyday language and bridge that gap. Yeah.
Great. And what about some challenges that you faced while hosting this show?
Well, the funny thing is, at first, the biggest challenge was constantly coming up with new ideas, and then doing the research, and then putting a show together. We did one show a week. Is that still?
Yes. Yeah.
Still one show a week. Which might not seem a lot compared to other big productions, but it was just a student show.
Yeah.
So one show a week was huge. And it was this constant grind, and as soon as you heaved a big sigh of relief and you're like, oh, we pulled that other one off. Oh right, we have to plan for the next one. And then the funny thing is, as we got used to it, I guess sort of near the end, it was less about coming up with new ideas, but it was more about actually limiting those ideas, picking the best ones, limiting the show, only talking, really focusing and bearing down on one thing. And our biggest challenge towards the end was making sure the shows weren't too long. Do you guys still do 1 hour?
We do, yep.
Yeah. So 1 hour, it seems like a lot, but it's not, actually. Eventually, it became very short, and we had editing became more cut, and less, well, let's put in another song,
Yeah, it's funny how that works.
Yeah. So that's funny how those challenges changed over time.
Definitely, yeah, as you became more familiar with just how to set it up and what's out there. Do you have some highlights or memorable moments to share?
I was thinking about this, what the highlights were, and I can't actually remember any specific highlights. It's been a long time. It's been 6 years. It kind of, it's not like an amorphous blur of nothingness, but all the highlights have kind of blurred into, I don't know, like the only thing I can really remember specifically was the intense thrill that would run through my body as soon as we were like, okay, we're flicking this switch, we're live, baby. That was always, like a roller coaster ride of terror and excitement, and which is so funny because you're in this room. It was usually too hot. You're wearing your pajamas because it's radio, baby. No makeup, who cares? All your other co-hosts are the same, and it's nothing changes, like tangibly, but that switch is on. That's live. There are people that can hear you now. Hopefully there's people that can hear you now. Hopefully somebody somewhere out there is paying attention and cares, and but it's happening. But it was so funny, that thrill that happened just from the little flick of a switch.
Definitely.
That's what I remember.
That's great. Are there any topics that you would like to hear about on future shows that we can pass along?
Well, have you guys addressed the sort of fentanyl crisis that's happening? Or?
We have a little bit. Last semester we talked about that a bit, but that's definitely an ongoing issue in our community for sure.
Yeah. I guess the other topic that has really come to the forefront for me in the last little while is about, gender identity and sexual orientation, and how that can connect with like access to healthcare, the type of things like, if you are going in for surgery, like, what's that? How's that journey going to be? And how will people judge you? And I'm just wondering, have you guys addressed that topic at all?
That's definitely a good one to be talking about. Yeah, that hasn't come up as of yet, but.
Yeah, well, it's a reality. It's getting, it's out there. It's something that we're gonna all have to address.
Definitely, yeah. So stay tuned for more information on that. Do you have any advice or words of wisdom for future hosts of A Sound Constitution?
Do it. I remember back when we were the second group. So there was the very first group. They pioneered the whole thing. It was a group of 4. They pioneered the show. They started it all with CHLY, and then it came up as an option that you could choose it. And I remember thinking, that's the coolest option there is for a community placement. Oh my God, I hope I get it. What it is anyway. So we were supposed to write down 3 choices, first, second, and third choice. And I was like, well, I just want to write it down for all 3. This is the only thing that is for me. I can't do anything but this show. And I thought that everyone else would be thinking the same thing. And so I wrote down for the first one, CHLY. For the second one, I was like, CHY. And then I was like, well, I don't want to be a total jerk. So I wrote down something else. I don't even remember what it was because it didn't matter, just the least sucky one. And it turns out that there was only 4 people in the entire cohort, and I think they were amalgamated together, that wanted to do the show. And I'm like, oh, thank God 4 people actually wanted to do the show. So, yeah, I don't know. How big of a group do you have?
We have 5 in ours.
Okay.
So.
And yeah, so I guess jump in there, both feet. Yeah, do it. Don't be afraid. It's funny, coming in here to do this, I was like, oh, I'm going to be on the other side of the mic. And I was nervous. And I was like, what am I nervous about? And the funny thing is, and then when I was on the other side of the mic, I was like, I was always nervous coming into your interview. So just know that whoever it is you're interviewing is basically just as nervous as you are, and that it's fine. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much for your insights into your experiences with the Sound Constitution.
You're welcome.
Hello, listeners. I'm here with Larissa, who is a VIU nursing alumni and a previous host of A Sound Constitution. Thanks for joining me, Larissa.
Thanks for having me.
So, how long ago were you a host of A Sound Constitution?
I began hosting in January of 2012 and ended in December 2012.
And so where has your career taken you since then?
Several different places. Initially, I began working as a correctional nurse at the Vancouver City Jail. That was my first job out of nursing school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I worked there for about 2 years before deciding to move on. I went to St. Paul's Emergency Department in Vancouver after that, where I specialized in emergency nursing and gained a ton of experience. During that time, I had a few opportunities to work at the mobile medical unit as well, which was set up in the downtown east side last winter during kind of the initial phase of the opiate crisis. So we were providing Narcan and education and really sort of overdose management. Since then, I've moved back to the island, and I'm currently working between the Nanaimo Emergency Department, Port Alberni Emergency Department, and Parksville Urgent Care Center.
So staying out of trouble, nice and busy.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So what was your biggest learning as a host of A Sound Constitution?
I think one of the biggest things that I learned was just how to locate reputable resources, pick out the most important information, and then articulate that to my audience. I think that is a skill that's important to have as healthcare providers. Since hosting the show, I've been able to participate in some education opportunities, such as presenting about the effects of alcohol to a UBC frat house, or more daily things like discussing harm reduction resources to intravenous drug users in the emergency department. And it's the exact same steps as constructing a Sound Constitution show. You know, locating the resources, checking the sources, highlighting the most relevant pieces of information, and then communicating that in a manner that's appropriate for the people receiving it.
So looking back, what do you feel was your biggest challenge as a host of A Sound Constitution?
I would say that the biggest challenge was the balance of working with a team of 6 smart, strong women who all had their own amazing ideas, and helping to ensure that we all felt heard and supported through this process.
So any highlights, memorable moments?
I'd say that my biggest highlight was getting to host a show on organ donation, which is a topic I feel very strongly about. I had the opportunity to do a live interview with the recipient of a double lung transplant.
Wow.
Yeah, which was not only informative, but it put a voice to the whole process, which some people can otherwise feel very disconnected from. And hopefully it helped to encourage people to register as organ donors because they heard someone who was alive because of it.
Are there any topics that you would like to hear about in future shows?
I think things like, you know, stress and healthy coping mechanisms are always important. Or it would be cool to hear sort of a show explaining the differences between a walk-in clinic, urgent care clinic, and emergency department, and when to access all of these things.
Fair enough. I feel like you have a lot of experience there.
Yeah, I can come and guest host on that one.
Perfect. And so do you have any advice, sage wisdom for future A Sound Constitution hosts?
Engage with your community. Seek out the information that they want to hear, and be aware of the resources that are available in your area so that you can help people to navigate these. But also just have fun. Hosting a radio show is an incredible opportunity, and especially a health promotion show in nursing school. It's really cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Larissa.
Yeah, thank you.
Your opinion matters.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to A Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY in Nanaimo, and we just heard from a couple of previous hosts of our show. Thank you to the ASC Alumni for joining in. Back to what one of A Sound Constitution's previous hosts was saying on the topic of communication and speaking to patients without using medical jargon or slang. We've got a fun clip from BuzzFeed with folks trying to pronounce some tricky medical terms.
I'm not a doctor.
Or barigmy.
Borborygmi.
Borborygmi?
Borborygmi?
Oh. I feel like it has something to do with the butt.
It's an ADHD problem.
Being born with an extra of something.
It's like you got a bad butt.
A name of one of your ribs? Okay, so it's pretty close.
Choledocholithiasis.
Choledocholithiasis?
Choledocholithiasis. Choledocholithiasis. I'm guessing if you have choledocholithiasis, it's not a good thing. Colon is acting up. You have 2 weeks left.
Or maybe it's like an advanced stage of cholera.
It has something to do with the groin, pimples and pus, and eats you from that area outwards.
Oh, the common bile duct.
Ankylosing spondylitis.
Ankylosing spondylitis?
Ankylosing spondylitis.
Ankle-losing spondylitis.
Tissue in your ankle isn't as spongy as it's supposed to be. It's when you spontaneously mess up your ankle.
The medical term for kinkles. These words are tricky, they trick you.
Temporoparietalis.
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 Temporoparietalis? Really? Yes! That sounds like a Harry Potter spell.
I think this is when your body overheats.
You're like temporarily paralyzed.
This is when your parents tell you that they're only going to be your parents temporarily.
You like that kind of thing?
Is that?
Yeah, there.
Sphygmomanometer.
Sphygmomanometer.
Schwimmomanometer.
Sphygmomanometer.
Sphygmomanometer.
I think this measures the amount of phlegm in your throat.
Measures how much of a man you are.
Something in your ear that senses balance. I feel like they could have just called it a blood measuring device.
And my roommate, who was in med school during college, you can see why he was so stressed out about learning flashcards all the time.
Make it code, I don't care. Just keep doing what you do.
Sphygmomanometer. Bum bum ba-da-dum. Ba-dum-ba-dum. Sphygmomanometer. Sphygmomanometer. Bum ba-da-da-dun, da-da-dun, da-da-dun. That's all I got.
That was a clip from BuzzFeed with people trying to pronounce medical terms. Want to know what they mean? Here's the lowdown. Borborygmi, rumbling sounds caused by gas moving through the intestines, commonly referred to as stomach growling or grumbling. Choledocholithiasis, also called bile duct stones. This is the presence of a gallstone in the common bile duct. Ankylosing spondylitis, a type of arthritis that affects the spine. Temporoparietalis, one of a pair of broad, thin muscles of the scalp. Sphygmomanometer, the instrument used to measure blood pressure, also known as the blood pressure cuff. Just a reminder that the information provided on our shows should not substitute health advice, and you should always consult your primary healthcare provider for your health concerns. Now, since this show is a bit of a throwback Thursday, with the gracious help from previous hosts of A Sound Constitution, we've been thinking quite a bit about what they've learned and what we've learned. So this next song is topically appropriate. Here's a musical interlude with a cover of Alanis Morissette's You Learn by Gustavo Trebien. Enjoy.
Recommend getting your heart trampled on to anyone. I recommend walking around naked in your living room. Yeah, swallowed it down, wanna jack a little pill. It feels so good, swimming in your stomach. Wait until the dust settles. You live, you recommend biting off more than you can chew to anyone. I certainly do. I recommend sticking your food in your mouth, and anytime feel free, throw it down. The caution blocks you from the wind. Hold it up to the rains. You wait and see when smoke clears. You live, you learn, you love, you learn, you cry, you learn, you lose, you learn, you bleed, you learn, you scream, you Wet it on the way a 3-year-old will do. Melt it down, you're gonna have to eventually anyway. The fire trucks are coming up around the bend. You live, you learn, you love, you learn, you cry, you learn, you lose, you learn, you bleed, you learn, you scream, you learn, you grieve, you learn, you joke, you learn, you laugh, you learn, you choose, you learn, you pray, you learn, you ask, you learn, you live, you learn.
That was a cover of Alanis Morissette's You Learn by Gustavo Trebien, and you're tuned in to 101.7 CHLY with A Sound Constitution. So this show has us all thinking a lot about learning, making connections, and applying those skills to different contexts. But how do we learn? Well, up next we've got a clip from TEDx about so-called learning styles, the importance of critical self-reflection, and the use of reputable, unbiased resources.
Bad news is, if you believe in learning styles, you're actually wrong. And I'll explain that in just a minute. But the good news is that it's not entirely your fault. This belief in learning styles is incredibly pervasive. It's so common that few people ever think to even question it, right? It sounds so logical, it sounds so real. But when put to the test, we found that learning styles don't exist. And again, there are tons of people that believe this. When we survey, for example, students and teachers, we find that something like 90% of them, or over 90% of people, believe that they have a learning style. And teachers today, many teachers, are still told that part of their job, in order to be effective teachers, is to figure out what their students' learning styles are and then to accommodate them for the classroom. There are even a host of companies and organizations out there that support learning styles and who, for a fee, will train you on how to maximize your potential, or that of your students, right, by addressing learning styles and learning what yours are. But again, the key is, when put to the test, these learning styles don't exist, and it doesn't make a difference. Now, I will say that when we survey people, many people say they have preferences. So if I asked you, how would you like to learn something, or how would you like to study? Many of you might say things like, oh, I'd prefer to see it, or I'd prefer to hear it, or I'd prefer to actually do it. So that's true. But the key is that those preferences don't actually enhance your learning when we test them in experimental conditions. And there are many different ways to test this, but the basic design is this. We bring in a bunch of different people who have supposedly different learning styles. We teach them in a variety of ways, right? And then we see if teaching them in one way somehow was better for them or more effective than others. So for example, let's say I had a list of words that I wanted you to memorize, right? In one group, I might show you that list of words. I would present the list of words to you. Or in another group, similarly, I might actually show you images of those words. In yet another group or another condition, I might just let you listen to those words and hear them. So you wouldn't actually see anything, but you would just hear someone saying dog, hose, coat, etc. Now, if learning styles existed, if it was true, we would expect that visual learners, or so-called visual learners, would be able to recall more words when they saw them, right? So either when they saw the list or when they saw the actual images. And we would expect that so-called auditory learners would be able to recall more words when they heard them, right? But again, the finding is learning is actually the same. The number of words that you recall is exactly the same regardless of how the material is presented to you. Now, I know that's just one example of one particular study, but I'm asking you to trust me that this has been replicated in many different contexts with many different people of all different ages and tested in slightly different ways with exactly the same results. In fact, there have been several meta-analysis papers where they've looked at all the research on this topic for 40 years, and all of them have concluded the same thing, that there's still no evidence that matching teaching styles to supposed learning styles or students' preferences actually makes a difference. But I would encourage you to look up some of this research on your own, in particular these review articles. So then how is that possible? I'm sure some of you are wondering, how does that even make sense, right? Because it sounds so good. And there's a lot of different research on learning and memory to explain this. But one of the main ideas is that most of what we learn in the classroom, and most of what teachers want us to know in particular, is stored in terms of meaning, and it's not tied to one particular sense or one particular sensory mode. Now, it's also true, just like people have preferences, it's also true that some of you might have better visual memories or better auditory memories or auditory processing skills compared to other people. And that might be advantageous for certain types of tasks. So for example, if I wanted you to remember what was the color of the coat on that last slide, or how many windows were on that house on the last slide, then having a really good visual memory would help with that. Likewise, if I had read you the list of words and I said, were they read in a high voice or a low voice? Or which words were read by a woman and which ones were read by a man? Then having a really good auditory memory would help with that. But those aren't typically the kinds of questions that teachers are asking you to remember or the things that teachers want you to learn in the classroom. Mostly what you're learning in the classroom is much more conceptual or meaning-based, right? It's not just what something looks like or what something sounds like. And by the way, this finding or this whole idea also helps to explain why simple rehearsal strategies like rereading your notes or just rewriting your notes, even though they're very commonly used strategies, they tend to not be very effective because rereading your notes or rewriting your notes doesn't necessarily help you understand the material. In order to retain information, right, we have to organize it in a way that's meaningful, right? We have to make connections to it, connecting it to our experiences or coming up with our own examples or thinking of how we're learning something in one class, how that relates to what else we know. That's what helps us remember it. Now, again, there's a lot of research to support this idea that most of what we learn is stored in terms of meaning and not according to visual images or auditory sound. But some of the best, most relevant research comes from these classic studies that were done in the 70s. Now, Chase and Simon, they were interested in chess players' abilities to recall pictures of chessboard games in progress. So what they would do is they would show players an image of a game in progress for a short time, typically only 5 seconds or so, and then it would disappear. And then they would ask the players to recall where were all the pictures, where were all the pieces in that picture. And what they found was a big difference between novice players or beginner players and experts. Beginner players, when asked to recall where the pieces were, they could only remember about 4 pieces. Right? Experts, on the other hand, could actually identify almost all of them. Over 20 of them could they correctly identify in the next game board when asked to recall these. Now again, they were interested in knowing, why is this difference? Why do we see this difference between beginners and novices? And it wasn't because, like you might be thinking, that the experts had better visual memories than the beginners. It was because the experts had more experience playing chess and more knowledge. In other words, this game board was more meaningful to them, right? They could see the strategy involved. They could imagine what was happening and why the players had their pieces positioned the way they did. And to further support this idea, they did a follow-up study. And in the follow-up study, they showed chess players pictures of randomly arranged chessboards, right? And that's this picture here. Now, to you or I, or to a beginner chess player, these might look basically the same. I mean, yeah, the pieces are in different places, but for the most part, they might be equally difficult to remember, right? To an expert, though, we found big differences when presented with a randomly configured board. Once it was random, experts no longer had an advantage in remembering pieces because it wasn't meaningful to them. But because there's no meaningful arrangement in this second piece, right, they lost that advantage, which again is just further evidence that we store information in terms of meaning and not according to a sensory mode. And this basic finding, by the way, has been extended to other contexts, everything from chess to basketball to computer programming and to dance. Right? We store information in terms of meaning and not limited to particular sensory modes. So that's the first reason. Another reason why this learning styles theory doesn't pan out is that, the best way to teach something or to learn something really depends on what it is you want to learn, right? Or depends on the content itself. Now, if I wanted you, for example, to know what a bunch of different songbirds looked like, the best way to teach you that is to let you look at pictures of those songbirds or let you see them in real life, right? But note that that's true for everybody. That's not true just because you're a visual learner, right? That's because looking at them is what I'm asking you to do, is to remember what they look like. On the other hand, if I wanted you to remember what they sounded like or to be able to distinguish between different songs of different songbirds, then letting you hear them would be the best way. But again, that applies to everybody. Just like if I wanted you to know what different flowers smelled like, the best way to teach you that is going to be to let you experience those flowers by smelling them. All right? But that doesn't mean you're an olfactory learner or that you learn everything better through smelling. I mean, take a minute to imagine what that would look like in a math class or in an anatomy class, right? Or a physics class. Right? And as absurd as that sounds, it's really important to remember that the same problems, the same criticisms apply whether we're talking about so-called olfactory learners or whether we're talking about auditory learners or visual learners or even kinesthetic learners. Right? The last three might seem more palatable or more reasonable, but the same issues apply. It really depends on what I'm asking you to learn, the best way to teach it. But that also brings me to another point, and that's this idea that many things can be taught using multiple senses. So it's not just limited to one, for example. So say I wanted you to learn the game of football, right? Probably the best way to teach you football is going to get you out there and play football, right? To actually practice and having that physical experience playing. But you'd also probably benefit from being able to watch a football game or being able to look at schematics or drawings of the different formations and the different positions, just like you'd probably also benefit from hearing coaching or hearing feedback as you're playing, right? You're getting the kinesthetic experience, the visual, and the auditory. Similarly, if a music teacher wanted you to know the different parts of a symphony orchestra, then yeah, going to an orchestra and listening to one would be beneficial, but it would also add to the experience if you had the capability to touch the instruments, or maybe to learn how to play them, right, or to actually watch one live. Again, it's not that different modes make it meaningful to different people based on their learning style. It's not like, oh, the visual learners are only going to learn by seeing it. Right? It's because incorporating multiple sensory experiences into one makes it, or into one lesson, makes it more meaningful. So then you might be wondering, why does this myth persist? Right? And there's a few different explanations. And the first one is quite simply that everybody believes it. Right? It's so common that you never even think to question it. Right? How could so many people be wrong? Right? If so many people believe it, how is that possible that it's wrong? But as you know, just because something is commonly believed doesn't necessarily make it true. Remember, just as an example, at one point we used to think that the Earth was the center of the universe, right? Until scientists like Copernicus and Galileo proved us otherwise. Right? Likewise, there was a time in which some people actually believed or were worried that polio might be caused by ice cream, right? Which we now know is nonsense. Right? And unfortunately, even today, one unfortunate myth that still persists is this idea that vaccines cause autism, despite the lack of any scientific evidence. Right? Just because a lot of people believe it doesn't make it true. And that might seem really obvious to you, but again, the key idea is that when something's so pervasive, it doesn't even occur to people to challenge it. Right? We need to be willing to critically reflect on beliefs, even if they're commonly believed. Another reason why this persists is, quite frankly, the idea of learning styles is sexy. Right? It sounds good. It feels good. Right? Saying people have different learning styles is another way of acknowledging that people are different, and differences are important, right? Especially when it comes to the classroom. Right? But me saying that learning styles don't exist, I'm not saying people are the same. Right? People do differ in many important ways. Learning styles just isn't one of them. And just because some ideas sound really good, just because we really want something to be true, right, doesn't make it so. We have to remember that, even when we're talking about something as appealing as Santa Claus, unicorns, Bigfoot, or learning styles. And last but not least, another reason why this belief persists is something called confirmation bias. And this is this natural tendency that we have as humans to want to be right. Right? People don't like to be right, or don't like to be wrong, I should say. So when people have this belief, right, or any belief, we tend to look for information that fits our beliefs, and we ignore information that doesn't fit our beliefs. Right? We don't really very frequently try to prove ourselves wrong. Right? More often than not, we try to prove ourselves right. We look for evidence to support whatever it is that we think. And sometimes this is deliberate, right? Sometimes this bias is very deliberate. So you all know that person who deliberately closes their eyes or plugs their ears and says, la, 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 I'm not listening, I don't want to hear that, and turns their back. Right? But more often than not, this is unintentional. This is subconscious. We don't even realize that we're doing it. How many of you, for example, have ever been thinking of someone only to have them call or text you? Or how many of you have experienced deja vu or had a dream only to have it come true, right? And you start to think, whoa, I've got something going on here, right? Some extrasensory perception, telepathic powers, right? Again, I'm sorry to say, you don't, right? That's been studied frequently too, and there's no evidence to suggest that we have these telecommunicative powers to talk to each other, right? But the problem is that we notice every time it happens, right? We notice every time we're thinking of someone and they call us because it's a cool coincidence, right? It's kind of exciting. We notice when we have that moment of deja vu. We don't notice all the times that we're thinking of someone and they don't call us, right? Or we don't really think about all the dreams that we've had that don't come true. Right? It's just like that other common belief that full moons are somehow associated with crazy behavior or increases in emergency room visits. This has also been something that people have scientifically studied, and again, despite common belief, there's no significant correlation there between full moons and emergency room visits. So now you might be wondering, why does it matter? Right? Who cares? So yeah, learning styles don't exist. Hopefully you're buying that by now, right? Yeah, I see why it's still so common though, but who cares, right? Why not believe in learning styles? And I would argue there's at least two important reasons why we need to stop believing this and stop spreading this idea that people have learning styles. The first one is that we're wasting valuable time and resources, valuable educational resources. Teachers already have a momentous task of accommodating students from all different backgrounds, of different ability levels, different disabilities in their classroom, different interests and motivations. That's not easy. Right? The whole fact that learning styles doesn't matter, to some extent, should be a relief, because it's one less thing that teachers have to worry about. Right? But at the very least, we can't afford to be wasting our time and resources trying to promote learning styles when there's no evidence that it actually helps learning, especially when there are research-supported strategies, things that we know we can do that actually do impact learning. So that's the first reason. The second reason is this whole idea that labeling yourself as a learner or labeling a student as a learner can not only be misleading, but it can be dangerous. Right? If I, as a teacher, think that you have a particular learning style or that you only learn in one way, that might prevent me from trying other strategies that could otherwise help you learn the information better. Likewise, if you as a student believe that you have a particular learning style, that could cause you to shut down or lose interest when a teacher isn't teaching in a way that's consistent with your preferred style. Right? And that might actually perpetuate your failure. But it's not because you couldn't learn that way, it's because you gave up and you stopped trying. Right? This whole idea that learning styles don't exist in many ways should be further good news, because it means that all of us are capable of learning in a variety of ways. We are not as limited as sometimes we think we are. So in conclusion, when I teach about this topic in my classes, and even when I talk to other professionals and colleagues, first reaction I get is usually a little bit of surprise. Right? Surprise that something that's so common and so ubiquitous isn't actually true. But that's oftentimes followed by a little bit of defensiveness. Right? And I'm sure there are some of you out there right now thinking, okay, I hear what she's saying. Yeah, I don't really care though. I know how I learn. Right? I know that I still have a learning style. People don't like to be wrong. Right? And belief change is really hard, especially when it's a belief that you've held for a really long time or one that's central to your identity. But again, it's really important that we're willing to let our guard down sometimes and to challenge our beliefs and to truly consider other perspectives or different ideas. How often do we get defensive when we hear information or hear ideas that we don't like to hear or that go against our beliefs? How often do we surround ourselves intentionally with like-minded people just so we don't have to face different perspectives? And in a day and age when information is more readily accessible than ever before, how often do our Google searches take us to showmeimright.com rather than unbiased evidence? Thank you.
That was a TEDx clip on so-called learning styles. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to A Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY Radio in Nanaimo. Up next, we've got a song you might be familiar with, and it's appropriate for our last show, I think. We will hear from Mike Love with Good News. Enjoy.
Rat race to get these from a cup of redemption. Have you ever really gotta know which way to go to let it for the people? Are you paying attention? Did they forget to mention? I got another question. Are you ready to move? Because we're going on a Babylon is falling. Come on, people, we gotta follow the love if we're gonna reach Zion above. Everybody's got a Facebook page. with all I lost. I just wanna remember. I can almost see it in my mind. Just wanna remember a time when things were simpler. I just wanna remember. I can almost feel it in my heart. Just take me back to the start when things were easier. And just give me that, give me that, give me that. Well, just give me that, give me that, give me that good news. Give me some love, I can never get enough of it. Filling me up, oh. Just give me that, give me that, give me that. Well, just give me that, give me that, give me that good news. Give me some love, I can never get enough of it. Filling me up, oh. Just give me that, give me that, give me that. Well, just give me that, give me that, give me that good news. Give me some love, I can never get enough of it. Filling me up, oh. Just give me that, give me that, give me that. Well, just give me that, give me that, give me that good news. Give me some love, I can never get enough of it. Filling me up, oh. Good news, I just need it. I give it to me, I just want some good news. I gotta have it, let it say so. Come on, oh. Good news, I give it to me now. I just want some. I give me some love, give me some love, give me some love. I wanna feel like a child again.
You're listening to A Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY in Nanaimo. That was Mike Love with Good News and a personal favorite of mine. Next, we'll hear from the team about this season's takeaway lessons.
Hey listeners, Julia here, and as a final sign-off for our 2017 A Sound Constitution season, I wanted to talk a little bit with you guys about what I've learned through this whole process. It's been such an amazing experience to be able to engage with the community of Vancouver Island through the radio. I can honestly say that when I came into nursing, it was not at all what I envisioned when I thought about doing a community nursing placement. But I'm happy to have ended up where I did. I've had the opportunity to learn about so many different areas of health, and I've had an amazing team to do it with. I think coming into any new situation, you have certain expectations. I'm not going to lie to you guys, having fun with school was not one of mine coming into this. But you, my amazing team, our instructor, and CHLY Radio have made this experience so much fun. I'd have to say one of my biggest takeaways for the past year has been learning the importance of teamwork and the value that effective group work has for the success of a project. I would not be where I am today without their constant support and encouragement. There's been so much learning over the past few seasons. I have to say I've really enjoyed tackling our Health Across the Lifespan series this year. It really made me realize how complex our lives are and how many health challenges we face through every stage. I think my favorite part of the show has been our good news segments. Media seems to focus on the negative in life, and I love that we've had a chance to shed light on some of the positive aspects of things our community's doing. Learning, like health, is a process. It's not a one-time decision, it's a lifelong commitment. Being on the radio has taught me to be open, to challenge preconceived ideas and be open to new ones. And that's something I'll always carry forward. So, for the last time from me, you stay healthy, Vancouver Island.
Hello, listeners. Brittany here again. What a season. Like my team members, I've had a lot of fun being a host of A Sound Constitution, and while I'm excited to move on, it's a little bittersweet. I'll miss putting shows together with the team. I think the most profound takeaway for me has been building capacity, or the idea that everyone is capable of learning and applying something new at any stage of life. If you're willing to reflect and learn from your mistakes, these mistakes really do become opportunities to grow, as cliche and cheesy as that may sound. Anyway, this can be applied to all areas of your life, especially in health and wellness, no matter what that looks like for you. So I hope we've given you some resources and information to help you make informed decisions about your health care, and I can't wait to tune in to A Sound Constitution when the next hosts work to promote health on the island. All the best to the future hosts. Thanks to those that came before us. Props to a rockstar team, our instructor, and RB at CHLY. This is Britt, signing off.
Hello everyone, Sophia here. Thank you so much for joining us this season. I have loved traveling through the lifespan, looking at so many different aspects to health promotion for all ages. It has been so beneficial for me as a nursing student, as it's enhanced my confidence through interviewing and public speaking, as well as increased my awareness of the vast variety of resources this island has to offer. I hope hope you've gained a takeaway or two as well. I also hope you enjoyed today's show. It was fun to help put together. Talking to past hosts of A Sound Constitution made me realize how unique this experience has been, and how many different skills I've gained from this that transferred to my future work as an RN. Who knew dealing with all the technical difficulties on the fly would really come in handy one day? Thanks for tuning in.
Hello everyone. I'm really going to miss being a host of A Sound Constitution. This opportunity has provided me with so much learning and so many memorable experiences. I truly do think that being on A Sound Constitution as a host has given me a number of skills that will benefit me throughout my whole nursing career. In doing this show, I have done a tremendous amount of learning alongside you all, in terms of the actual recording of the show, but also in the research that goes into finding the content for the shows. I'm so thankful for this opportunity. It's been really amazing.
Thanks everyone for another wonderful and insightful season of A Sound Constitution. Throughout this season, we covered everything from preconception to end-of-life care, the journey we like to call health promotion throughout the lifespan. We hope this season of shows has made you think, question, learn, and promote all aspects of your health. It is our goal to help our listeners build capacity and learn how they can better promote their health by providing relevant and exciting health information, resources in the community, information from experts, and much more. We especially want to thank our instructor, Sandy Alexander, and our field guide, Arby Frew from CHLY. Without you two, A Sound Constitution would not be successful. We also want to thank our community of listeners and experts for always encouraging us to continue to question the taken for granted aspects of healthcare, and in allowing us to always expand our knowledge through research for our shows. We will all carry this special part of our nursing program with us into our nursing careers. We have an exciting chapter coming up, and all of you have helped to add to it. Also, a shout out to the alumni who graciously added to our Alumni Show, and for making A Sound Constitution an ever-growing program. I guess this is where A Sound Constitution team says goodbye and passes the baton to the next team. We wish you well and hope you continue to promote your health and stay healthy, Vancouver Island. Now for some giggles, the much anticipated blooper reel.
Ba ba ba.
Ba ba ba.
Ba ba ba. Bloopers. Oh. This is not going to go on. That's not working. We need to start again.
Perfect. Thank you. Next. Do you want to wait until later?
I can do it now if you want. I don't care.
Totally up to you.
Aren't you like 29? Don't you have a long way to go?
No, I'm 34. So when Brittany turns 40, I will definitely let her know. I'll spend 10 days lording it over. Is it recording?
You had a really great perspective to share and emphasized the importance of being non-judgmental on how others act, because you never know what... I just can't talk this week, I'm sorry. Because you never...
Still going? Oh yeah, it's still going.
Oh, there's... Can I... It's just my bloopers are all gonna be...
I think you were gonna say something like... Whoa.
Testing 1, 2, 3. So, two guys walk into a bar.
You did give the man a microphone.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Welcome to Brainformation, the segment where
Hey, Jade. Well, actually, Jade. Right, Jade? Well, actually, Jade. So, Jade. Well, no, not exactly, Jade. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. 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 All right.
Thanks, Brittany. Just a reminder that any information that we provide you with today is in no means meant to substitute the advice of your healthcare
so that you can, so that they can, so that they understand.
That's bad. This is dry and boring. Oh God.
Thanks for listening to A Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY Radio.
For more information, questions, or comments, please visit our Facebook page at A Sound Constitution.
Tune in again next Thursday morning from 10 to 11.
Stay healthy, Vancouver Island.